guidelines before the actual lecture. So यहाँ के बच्चे आपको इस वे में सुनना चाहते हैं, आपको एक आइडियल के रूप में देखते हैं, तो आपके जुबान से आपकी दास्तां सुनना चाहते हैं.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You can hear me, right?
Yeah.
So thank you very much for this opportunity. Can you tell me who are in the audience? What students
Sir,
are?
there are several students from school, students of college, also teachers from all local schools and intermediate colleges, teachers of undergraduate colleges. So it is a very mixed group and it is being live streamed on YouTube. So several of the participants are there directly joining through YouTube.
Okay. So, so I'll start. Thank you very much again. I'm very sorry I may have to speak only in English, but I'll understand Hindi. आप हिंदी में पूछ सकते हैं कोई क्वेश्चन है तो मैं इंग्लिश में बोलता हूँ. Right? So let me start. As you said, you want to introduce myself. I'm a biologist, working in the area of development, that how from a single cell, all of us are born as, a 50 trillion cell organism with eyes only here or ear, only here and nose here and so forth, all the body parts, how they get positioned and how they are all connected. That is an area called developmental biology. So I'm a scientist working in this area. I started off in the school. My interest was mostly in history and literature, not in sciences. I got more interested in sciences only when I came to 10th standard. In 10th standard, because the more experiments were done in the school, I got interested in sciences, particularly when some chemistry experiments were done. But in the 11th and 12th, what we I studied in Karnataka. In Karnataka, there is a city called Dharwad. Dharwad is famous for Hindustani classical music. It is the town of Bhimsen Joshi. Okay, and in Dharwad, in 11th and 12th in Karnataka, according to the board, you have to take 4 subjects. I took physics, chemistry, mathematics, and biology. Although I was more interested in physics and mathematics and chemistry, the biology teacher was so good. They taught me genetics so well that actually helped me to think that I should do genetics. Right? Genetics is about study of inheritance. How do we get all the features of a human being? How do we get very different specific features of our parents or of our family from our parents? It could be the features of my grandfather or it could be the features of my grandmother. But what I get is from my parents, by my mother and father. But not only they give specific features like hair color or eye color and my height or the skin color, I also inherit all the features of a human being. If I'm born as a human being, I'm born as a human being to my parents. And that's what I wanted to study. And that's how I started studying genetics. And during that time, I also studied evolutionary biology, Darwinian evolution. And then I moved to do masters. And because I was more and more interested, I wanted to study more. I did my masters and PhD. Now, you may ask, then I did my PhD in Cambridge, in a very famous university, 800-year-old university, which is what many people in Banaras Hindu University know. Many of them have studied in Cambridge, the faculty. Some of the original founders of Banaras Hindu University, professors, are all from Cambridge University, because that was the main university. Cambridge and Oxford are the 2 universities. You could hear me well, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that's where I started. And after that one, I returned to India in 1993. I wanted to start my own work in the area of developmental biology I spoke. And that's when I started in Hyderabad. Then from Hyderabad, I went to Pune. And now I'm in Delhi in Ashoka University. Now, most important point that students should know is, if you are interested in a particular subject, you should read more about it, not from the textbook, by reading other books related to that field. Not only the latest textbook, you should also read the old ones. Like, for example, when I was interested in evolution, I studied Darwin's original book, Origin of Species. It is written in 1859, more than 150 years ago. But I read that because that was important for me to understand even today's modern understanding of evolution, well, understanding what was Darwin was saying at that time. That is called the process of science. You need to understand how science, that's, I'll come to that in a minute in my talk, right? And second point that I really is that what I need to is, you have to work with people, because in science you cannot do everything alone. And I had a very good people in my lab. I had very good PhD students. People came from all over the country and also from outside the country. I had people who go, coming from France to work with me, people coming from Germany, people coming from Calcutta, Delhi, you know, Pune, of course, and Bangalore, and multiple places in the country. Some of came from small towns, some came from large cities. They all worked together, and we all had very good relationship. And there was no boss or that kind of a relationship. We all working as colleagues, a PhD student and myself, and that helped me to sort of progress well in producing more papers, which gave me all the awards that Professor Singh mentioned. And so what I'll do now is
Thank you.
this much
Thank you,
introduction.
sir, for sharing about your journey from Dharwad up to the level of IISER, and now you are at Ashoka University. So really interesting. बहुत अच्छा लगा सर आपकी इस लाइफ की जर्नी को सुनने में, और ये एक इंस्पिरेशन है कि आपको हिस्ट्री सब्जेक्ट पसंद था और देन आप उससे स्विच ओवर किए साइंस में, और किस तरह से आपको छोटे छोटे एक्सपेरिमेंट्स जब आपने किया तो साइंस को समझने में आपको आसानी होने लगी और आपका इंटरेस्ट उसमें पैदा हुआ। और डेफिनेटली जो आपने बताया कि जेनेटिक्स में आपका इंटरेस्ट इसलिए डेवलप हुआ कि आपकी बायो की टीचर बहुत अच्छी थी। तो sometimes it happens that people choose an ideal in the form of a teacher, और उनके रास्ते पे चल के भी बहुत सारे बच्चे अपने कैरियर को एक अंजाम दे पाते हैं। और आप इसके एक बहुत ही अच्छे एग्जाम्पल हैं हम लोगों के लिए सर। और आपका जो रिसर्च है ड्रोसोफिला के जेनेटिक्स में, वो बहुत ही इनोवेटिव है। आपने इंटरडिसिप्लिनरी साइंसेस की भी बात कई जगह की है, और डीबीटी स्टार स्कीम से भी आप हमेशा जुड़े हुए हैं और हमारे लिए हमेशा सपोर्टिव रहे हैं। मैं जब भी गई हूँ और प्रेजेंटेशंस मैंने दिया है टास्क फोर्स की मीटिंग्स में, तो आपने वहां पे जो मेंटरिंग किया, उन चीजों को मैं किसी तरह अपने कॉलेज के लेवल पे लेके आई, इस पटल पे लाई जहां जो चीजें नहीं थी हमने कोशिश किया। और हमारी जो पूरी टीम है, हमारे कोऑर्डिनेटर्स हैं, हमारे जो वेरियस डिपार्टमेंट्स हैं जो इस स्कीम से जुड़े हुए हैं, सारे कोऑर्डिनेटर्स, सारे मेंबर्स, सभी लोग काफी मेहनत करते हैं। और आपने जो कुछ हमें सिखाया, मैं उनको यहाँ पे लाके बताई, और हम इस तरह से इम्प्रूव करते गए, और आज शायद यही सारे कारणों से हमें स्टार स्टेटस स्कीम मिली है। तो अब मैं ज्यादा समय ना लेते हुए आपके टॉक की तरफ मूव करना चाहूंगी, that it will be very beneficial talk regarding the career counseling of the students. So, so please
So you can
start.
see my slides, right, everybody?
Yes, sir. It is visible here, sir.
Okay, thank you. So what I will do is, as I mentioned, my interest has always been in history during my school days. I used to read a lot about Indian history more than anything else. But at the same time, when I went to science, history was still interesting for me. So I started reading history of science. Even today, I teach history of science to my students. Wherever first year undergraduate students, typically I teach first history of science, then history of biology, history of genetics, and history of molecular biology. Because understanding history is so important in every field. For example, today we are discussing, what should be India's economic growth, what should be our, how we basically, set up our developmental program, what should be our educational programs, and variety of different things we want to do in the country or as an individual. It's better to have some understanding from the history, how where we are today, how we have come about. Once you understand this history, it's easy for you to plan the future. Because it's a country of 1.5 billion people, you need to understand the history. Similarly, it's very important to understand the history of science if you want to become a scientist. So what I will do is I'll take 5 minutes to explain a little bit about the history of science. Although one cannot go on and on give a whole entire course on history of science, but today I will only sort of give a very short introduction. Okay. Now, first question you may ask is, all the kids, school kids है, आप पूछ सकते हैं, ये साइंस क्या है? What is science? Right? Science is, वो फिजिक्स नहीं है, केमिस्ट्री नहीं है, मैथमेटिक्स नहीं है, बायोलॉजी नहीं है. Science is not physics, chemistry, mathematics or biology. That is the content. That is the one subject knowledge discovered using scientific methods. Science is a way of understanding the world. It could be natural world or it could be human world. You can understand human languages, you can understand our economy, you can understand our, uh, what we eat, you can understand very different types of social infrastructure. At the same time, you can also understand natural world. What is a planet, what is a star, what is an atom, right? What is a biological system, and so forth. It's science, it's simply एक तरीका है to know things. It is not the content itself, right? Many things that we have learned about the physical world, what we learn in physics, it's using scientific methods. So it has become a branch of science. So most important aspect of science is it should be completely unbiased and objective, right? हमारा पर्सनल ओपिनियन इसमें नहीं आना चाहिए. अनबायस्ड मीन्स कोई पर्सनल ओपिनियन नहीं आना चाहिए. इट शुड बी कंप्लीटली अनबायस्ड. नाउ यू लुक एट दिस पिक्चर. ए पिक्चर में क्या देख रहे हैं आपको? यू सी सन, यू सी अर्थ, एंड यू ऑल्सो सी मून, राइट? Now, if you see every day in the morning, you actually see you see is the sun rising from the east and setting in the west. You don't see it's the earth which is moving around itself, and earth is also moving around the sun, right? Earth rotates on its axis. That you don't realize, you don't experience. So if I say unbiased, मेरा ओपिनियन नहीं होना चाहिए, और मैं पूछता हूँ किसी और को, आप क्या देख रहे हैं? Then you can go on asking everybody in Varanasi. वाराणसी में पॉपुलेशन कितना होगा? 10 लाख पे 20 लाख होगा. 20 लाख लोग से पूछ लीजिए, everybody will say हमको वो सन मूवमेंट दिखा रहे हैं, right? Then you can ask other people in the country, 1.5 billion people. Then you can ask whole world. आज का पॉपुलेशन है, वर्ल्ड पॉपुलेशन 7 बिलियन है, 700 करोड़. सारे लोग एक ही देख रहे हैं, सन रेजिंग इन द ईस्ट, थोड़ा मूवमेंट होगा ऊपर से और वेस्ट में नीचे गिर रहा है. Then no one has seen the movement of the earth. But now we have established that it is the earth which moves around its axis and earth goes around the sun. It is not that sun around goes around us, right? That is what science can do. Science can do, it can discover the phenomena which is beyond our own perception, entire human perception. अभी 7 बिलियन नहीं है, पहले का कोई देख लीजिए, कोई नहीं दिखा है डायरेक्ट. बट साइंटिफिक मेथड्स यूज करके वी कैन डिस्कवर natural or even human history, or sorry, human phenomena or natural phenomena which is beyond our own sensory perception. That's why if you have to use scientific methods to, for example, आज का अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट कितना है, आज का जीडीपी कितना है, जीडीपी का ग्रोथ कैसे चल रहा है, आज का ट्रैफिक कैसे जा रहा है, सबके लिए साइंटिफिक मेथड यूज कर सकते हैं. क्योंकि कोई एक आदमी, एक बंदा, however intelligent, that person will only put some amount of personal opinion इसमें, और completely unbiased नहीं हो सकता है. बस if you use scientific methods which is evidence based, then इसका इतना unbiased हो सकता है कि it can be completely beyond human perception itself. वही मैं बोल रहा हूँ. So scientific methods है. पहले हम लोग एक हाइपोथेसिस करते बेस्ड ऑन प्रायर नॉलेज, और हाइपोथेसिस को वैलिडेशन और टेस्ट करने के लिए वी आस्क फॉर मोर डेटा, मोर ऑब्जर्वेशंस. कभी कभी एक्सपेरिमेंट भी कर सकते, वी डू एक्सपेरिमेंट्स ऑफ कोर्स. और कोई मैथमेटिक्स यूज करके उसका मैथमेटिकल एक्सट्रापोलेशन करते हैं. फिजिक्स के मैथमेटिक्स में, सॉरी फिजिक्स में वो थोड़ा ज़्यादा है. आजकल बायोलॉजी में भी बहुत सारे मैथमेटिक्स यूज हो रहा है. देन उसका रिफाइनमेंट होता है. से फॉर एग्जांपल गैलीलियो कुछ बोला, गैलीलियो के बाद में कुछ फिजिसिस्ट वो मोशन ऑफ प्लैनेट्स के बारे में कुछ बता रहे थे. देन न्यूटन से बहुत अच्छा तरह से लॉज ऑफ मोशन से ही कुड एक्सप्लेन मूवमेंट ऑफ प्लैनेट्स. उसके बाद आइंस्टीन आया. आइंस्टीन ने इतने बड़ा रिफाइनमेंट किया कि न्यूटन से बहुत बड़ा हो गया. आइंस्टीन के बाद भी बहुत सारे साइंटिस्ट उसको फर्दर इम्प्रूवमेंट किया है. क्वांटम फिजिक्स का शुरू हुआ. ये सब हो गया क्योंकि किसी ने हाइपोथेसिस बिल्टअप करके उसको कुछ ऑब्जर्वेशंस और एक्सपेरिमेंट करके दे विल प्रोड्यूस अ पीस ऑफ नॉलेज. वो हमारा बेसलाइन हो सकता है. अभी हम लोग 21st सेंचुरी में है. 2022 फरवरी 11 समझ लीजिए. वो कोरोना वायरस के बारे में कुछ आदमी ने कुछ रिसर्च किया था. वो बताया कि कुछ वायरस ऐसा ह्यूमन सेल्स को अंदर जा रहा है. वो उनका रिजल्ट्स नॉलेज 2020 से हुआ, लेट से वो आज का हाइपोथेसिस हो सकता है. देन वी ऐड सम मोर डेटा फॉर द नेक्स्ट पर्सन वर्किंग ऑन कोरोना वायरस. उनको हमारा डेटा से वो क्या हम लोग बोलते हैं, वो नया हाइपोथेसिस हो सकता है. सो हाइपोथेसिस सिर्फ हम लोग एक आदमी का हाइपोथेसिस फर्दर रिफाइन नहीं. द रिजल्ट्स ऑफ द प्रीवियस पर्सन कैन बी माय हाइपोथेसिस. माय रिजल्ट्स कैन बी हाइपोथेसिस फॉर द नेक्स्ट पर्सन. दैट्स हाउ साइंस प्रोग्रेसेस विद टाइम. अभी 2-3 हजार साल से ये चल रहा है, राइट? ऑब्जर्वेशंस, कुछ इंटरप्रिटेशन गलत हो गया है, कुछ इंटरप्रिटेशन ठीक हो गया था, कुछ इंटरप्रिटेशन को वैलिडेट करते हैं. पहले वैलिडेशन शुरू हुआ था कि ग्रीक से. वो ग्रीक फिलोसोफर्स आपको पता होगा, प्लेटो, सोक्रेटिस, पाइथागोरस. वो पाइथागोरस ने एक थ्योरम दिया था, आप सबको पता है, स्कूल्स में भी आप लोग पढ़ा हुआ है. पाइथागोरस थ्योरम को लिए टेस्ट प्रूफ के लिए Pythagoras himself gave 7 proofs. Now people can give some 30-40 different proofs. But reason you wanted to give proof is someone has to prove that this theorem is valid across all context. It should not become valid only in one context, right? Otherwise, it will not become a mathematical equation. To become a mathematical equation or a theorem, it should be beyond any context. But you have to prove that. That is the beginning of experimental research in the world, and they started with Greek, and now of course almost all of us do experiments. experiment can be simply make observation. If you use a telescope and make observation, that's also an experiment, right? Or if you take a microscope and make observation, that's also an experiment. Experiment doesn't mean that you have to manipulate things always. हिस्ट्री ऑफ साइंस में भी आपको थोड़ा ज़्यादा इंटरेस्ट होना चाहिए, बिकॉज अनलेस यू रीड हाउ पीपल हैव डिस्कवर्ड थिंग्स यू विल नॉट बी एबल टू वन, एंड हाउ नॉलेज वर ट्रांसमिटेड. आपको हमको अभी बहुत सारे पता हुआ है हाउ वी केम टू नो अबाउट इट. Many things we don't have a proper person on it. For example, who discovered zero? We know it's Indians, but who in India discovered the use of zero, right? Who developed it? It's not a discovery, it's a develop, it's a method, right? So पहले merchants लोग थे, they used to transfer knowledge orally, right? Later, small manuscript लिखते थे ना हम लोग. Then it was only 1 copy, 2 copy you can make and then take it to different places. So like for example, Chinese came to India, took some manuscript so that they could use our knowledge, kind of a thing. Similarly, when Alexander came, he brought some good knowledge from Greece. We started using the Greek knowledge after Alexander came, right? So people were going back and forth, either invaders or merchants or travelers. They used to exchange information either with the help of small manuscripts or oral communication. Then Gutenberg revolution happened. Johannes Gutenberg is the one who developed printing press in Germany. Not only you can communicate text, you can communicate images. Then you can show a plant or a tree, leaf, or an animal or a human being, so that everybody can understand much more than simply reading a text. That's how finally the history as a science started becoming larger and larger, because books enabled us to make multiple copies, thousands of copies, and send across the world. And later, of course, now we use internet so that we can actually exchange information in real time. अभी कोरोना वायरस के बारे में कोई नया डिस्कवरी होने तो immediately will come to know because of the internet. और साइंस का थोड़ा ज़्यादा, क्योंकि मैं ये सब क्यों बता रहा हूँ, क्योंकि आपको क्या इंटरेस्ट है कि साइंस, करियर्स इन साइंस में फ्यूचर कैसे है, इसके टू अंडरस्टैंड दैट, टू प्लान आपका वो करियर जर्नी है ना, यू नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड अब हम लोग कहाँ से कहाँ पहुँचा है, राइट? दैट्स वेयर यू नीड टू नो लिटिल बिट ऑफ हिस्ट्री. अभी देखो, साइंस इज स्टेट स्पॉन्सर्ड. पहले आप सोचोगे कि न्यूटन, गैलीलियो और इवन आइंस्टाइन, ये सारे लोग अपने पैसे से कुछ काम करके, रामन, सीवी रामन भी, राइट, आपका घर में आपका वो उनका घर में और कई काम करते थे. अभी आजकल सारे कंट्रीज में इंक्लूडिंग इंडिया, साइंस इज स्पॉन्सर्ड बाय द गवर्नमेंट. स्टेट स्पॉन्सर मीन्स गवर्नमेंट स्पॉन्सर्ड. गवर्नमेंट पैसे देता है, salary they will give, and also give you facilities, give you money to do research. Now more and more industries, private industries are also giving money to do research. And science, pehle, for example, Newton worked alone, Einstein worked alone as a one individual. आजकल साइंस वो नहीं होता है, हमेशा ये टीम वर्क है. कभी कभी मेगा साइंस बोलते हैं ना, जो ज़्यादा लोग करते हैं, पर्टिकुलरली इन फिजिक्स में ऐसा हो रहा है, बायोलॉजी में वो हो रहा है. Thousands of people will work together to discover something. आपको पार्टिकल फिजिक्स में हिग्स बोसन के बारे में सुना होगा. हिग्स बोसन डिस्कवर करने के लिए 3000 फिजिसिस्ट ने मिला के 20 years काम किया था. आप लाइगो के बारे में सुना होगा, ब्लैक होल डिस्कवरी. ब्लैक होल डिस्कवरी के लिए 2000 लोग 20 years काम किया था. रियली? और आज का साइंस भी थोड़ा गोल ओरिएंटेड है. वो हमारा एनवायरनमेंट को प्रोटेक्ट करना है, क्लाइमेट चेंज को रिवर्स करना है, सब लोगों का प्रॉस्पेरिटी इंक्रीज करना है. सो दैट इज सम गोल टू द साइंस. पहले जैसा मैं वो ऊपर देख रहा हूँ क्योंकि वो स्टार कैसे है, वो स्टार का वो दूसरा स्टार का रिलेशन क्या है, that kind of questions are less in now. Although there are even today, people are asking some what is called blue sky research, but mostly it's goal oriented. Science also become a social endeavor. ठीक है, आजकल बहुत सारे साइंस डायरेक्टली सोसाइटी रिलेटेड सब्जेक्ट के बारे में यूज करते हैं. बट आज का वो 2 साल पहले एक अभिजीत बैनर्जी और एस्तर दुओ, उनका नोबेल प्राइज मिला इकोनॉमिक्स में। एक्चुअली साइंटिस्ट है, वो साइंटिफिक मेथड, साइंटिफिक एक्सपेरिमेंट यूज करके सम इकोनॉमिक पॉलिसी डेवलपमेंट किया था, उसके लिए उनको नोबेल प्राइज दिया। सो साइंस हैज बिकम अ सोशल एंडेवर नाउ। अभी आजकल बहुत सारे सिटीज में, बड़ा सिटीज में साइंटिस्ट, स्टैटिस्टिशियन, मैथमेटिशियंस, फिजिसिस्ट, सारे लोग मिला के एक ट्रैफिक प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व करने के लिए ट्राई कर रहे हैं। That's become, even scientists are required to solve these kind of problem. Water management, कैसे water को manage करना है एक बड़ा सिटी में, ये सब साइंटिफिक प्रॉब्लम्स हो गया है। अभी और 2 मिनट इंडियन साइंस के बारे में। सिर्फ 1947 से 2017 को, वो 70 ईयर का टाइम में हम लोग एक बुक रिलीज किया था। आपका टीचर्स के पास होगा इसका कॉपीज, हिंदी में भी है और इंग्लिश में भी है ये बुक। 70 ईयर्स का इंडियन जर्नी, पोस्ट इंडिपेंडेंट साइंस का जर्नी क्या था, वो लिखा है इसमें। आप सबको पता है कि हम लोग वेरी सून ऑफ द इंडिपेंडेंस, वेरी पुअर कंट्री, अमेरिका से जो फूड भी आ रहा था, वीट वगैरह, एंड बस फिर भी हम लोग साइंस एंड टेक्नोलॉजी के पर भरोसा रख के वी स्टार्टेड मेनी थिंग्स। IIT शुरू हुआ, एग्रीकल्चर रिसर्च हो गया, डिफेंस रिसर्च, एटॉमिक एनर्जी रिसर्च, स्पेस रिसर्च, और कंप्यूटर यूज करने के लिए हम लोग the third or fourth country in the world to start using the computer, even if it was a poor country. IIT Kanpur started a computer science degree program in 1964. It was the second university in the world to start computer science degree program after UC, Caltech in the California. It was the first one to start a degree in computer science, and India is the second one in IIT Kanpur. So although we were a poor country, not many people were in science, but the scientific literacy among few people was very high. It was of the same standard as anywhere else in the world. आपको CV रामन, जगदीश चंद्र बोस सब के बारे में सुना होगा. That generation of scientists we still had, and those are the people who struggle, right? Homi Bhabha, Vikram Sarabhai, S.S. Bhatnagar, इतने सारे लोग मिला के, then they all work together and set up a very good science and technology ecosystem in the country. And in 60 years, we became self-sufficient in food production, milk production, and we also liberalized economy in 1991. All this thing was possible because India invested in science and technology. And I'll just skip this. And we started expanding. Beginning of 21st century, India has expanded. More IITs, expansion of existing IITs. सारे IIT का strength double हो गया है. सेंट्रल यूनिवर्सिटी बहुत सारे शुरू हुआ, बहुत सारे प्राइवेट यूनिवर्सिटी शुरू हुआ है. IISER शुरू, NISER, IIST, NIPER, इतने सारे 100 new organizations, more than 300 new university, just in the last 10 years alone, right? Because of why we wanted to do this, because we wanted to increase the number of people in science and technology, because science and technology is expanding. Science and technology is the only way to solve societal problem. India has the capacity, India has the history of contributing to science. We should be at par with Europe and America in science and technology. That's how we started expanding our base. बट आप लोग मैं क्या क्या भी बताया सारे, ये हमारा वर्ल्ड है. हमारा वर्ल्ड आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट इन टर्म्स ऑफ एज, टाइम, ठीक है. एंड सो आवर टाइम इज ओवर. अभी 2022 है. द नेक्स्ट by 2025 you will be ready. Some of you are in the college, you will go to masters, then you will do PhD, or some of you may directly join a company to do some research or do something else in sciences. I'll talk about very different careers in science, opportunities in science. Now आपको समझ में होना चाहिए कि अभी हम लोग history से देख के how we have come about. Now you should know what would be in the future. पहला, compared to my world, my time, or your teachers or your grandparents' time or your parents' time, the world is changing too fast. Two types of change. एक तो natural phenomena, climate change है, environmental degradation हो रहा है, climate change हो रहा है. They are changing our surroundings too fast. And another one is because of the internet, because of the globalization, that's also changing our human society very fast, right? Because everybody is influencing everybody because of fast changing world, because information comes to directly to our screen through our mobile phone, through our laptops or our television screen. We see what's happening around the world almost immediately. This makes our demands different than what we had 20 years ago. Our demands were different in our life. Today our demands are much different because we see the whole world all the time, right? So in this one, it's very important to not to forget that development should be sustainable, so that environment is not affected, our global warming is not in further increases. Even more important for India is equitable development. हमारा वो 150 करोड़ लोग हैं ना, फिर भी आधे के आधे ज़्यादा तरफ पॉवर्टी है अभी भी. हम लोग अब बोल रहे थे कि हम वो भी रिच कंट्री हो गया है. इंडिया हैज़ डन एक्सट्रीमली वेल. साइंस एंड टेक्नोलॉजी यूज़ करके हम लोग स्टैंडर्ड ऑफ लाइफ को बढ़ा दिया है. स्टिल India is still has very large number of poor people. We need to make sure that they also are prospered, right, in coming years. So we have to make the development equitable. सब लोगों के लिए development होना चाहिए. That is your world. आपको ये सब you have to keep it in mind. ये करने के लिए, because if you don't know what is tomorrow, then what is the education is all about? Then you should be equipped how to solve the problems, right? You should also learn how to learn, right? Because the content आजकल पूरा internet में है. You can get it on mobile, you can get it on your computers. More than the content, for example, if I ask you what is the speed of light, you don't need to worry about it. You can always find out from your computer. But what is the importance of knowing speed of light? You should know, right? If as a physics person. Or if I ask you what is the structure of DNA, you don't need to remember the structure of DNA, but you should remember what is the importance of structure of DNA. Because of the double helical structure, it has a certain features which helps in genetics, which helps in high inheritance with high degree of fidelity. It helps in genetic integrity. It helps in copying mechanism. All that thing you should know, but you don't need to remember the details, because the details can come from internet. So rather than memorizing the facts, you should know the concept, right? So you should know how to learn. You should also know how to solve problems. Now, हम teachers हम लोग अभी 20 years 30 years के पहले कुछ हम लोग सिखाए थे, and we learned something. We should not simply repeat the same thing to our student, because our students are going to some future in 2025 2020 30. Then whatever we learn may not be useful for you. Whatever today, it should be at least useful for you tomorrow, right? That's why it's very important that teachers change the way we teach, students change the way they learn. Both should happen. It's a joint project. Both students को भी change होना चाहिए, teachers को भी have to change. Now, to design your career in future in sciences, these are the most important thing. Analytical ability, आपको analyze करना पड़ेगा. See, analysis means what? You have to, like scientific methods में हम लोग क्या करते हैं? There is a problem. You first divide the problem into smaller modules, right? Then you address each one of them separately and put them together. That is the method of analysis. you also have to understand how to connect the knowledge, known knowledge, to solve a real life problem. You may know, for example, in mathematics, may integration, right? If you know integration, you should also know how to use methods of integration to understand rainfall pattern, right? Amount of rainfall that may happen in Varanasi, for example, in a whole year, and how much rain you may get, how much water you may be able to collect during water harvesting. So that way you can apply directly to address the societal problem. Critical thinking is very important. You should not simply believe what is said in the newspaper and your WhatsApp. You should also ask questions. Critical thinking is comes only when you ask questions. Critical thinking means you don't believe in whatever people say. You don't believe in whatever you read. First thing you ask is it true? And you have to find out for yourself how to find that it is true or not. That is what critical thinking is all about, right? Then self learning. All the once you know analytical ability, once you have critical thinking ability, automatically you will be self learning ability, because critical thinking is important for self learning. Unless you ask question, right? Unless you say I don't believe in, unless I am convinced that it is true, right? Automatically you will be critical thinker. Then your self learning ability increases. आजकल हम लोग, because again, your world is going to be after this pandemic, right? Whatever the career you're talking about, आपको हो, reason I'm putting this slide आज, क्योंकि you must be worried, आपको थोड़ा anxious होना गया होगा that what would be world after the pandemic. So आप लोग ऐसा प्रिपेयर हो रहा है, टीचर्स ने ऐसा ट्रेनिंग दे रहा है आपको. So will it be useful? क्योंकि कोरोना वायरस से हम लोग इतना सफर हो रहा है सारे लोग वर्ल्ड में. Should their career be different? What should we do, right? So that's why I thought I'll explain to you. Will the world be different between pre-COVID and post-COVID time? Because all our education training is based on the pre-COVID world, but we are moving now to the post-COVID world, right? आजकल पूरा relaxation हो रहा है, but if not to this year, by 2023, hopefully everything will be normal. Now, first you have to understand is we have had many such pandemics in the history, not just only this particular 2020, 2019 to 21, what we have faced so far, the SARS-CoV-2. Earlier also there are many pandemics. The human history is full of such pandemics, but we have come out. The knowledge is continuously progressed. People have continuously discovered something new, invented something new. So the world has always gone to more and more positivity in some of change. If the world is talking about human rights, talking about democracy, talking about equality, talking about sustainability, it's because science has continuously progressed in all these through difficult times, right? So first thing, you should not worry about coronavirus. Second is, what is important is what we learned during this coronavirus is, although science was practiced always as a team in the last 100 years, right, 20th century onwards, science is going to be practiced mostly in larger groups after the coronavirus. One change that will happen is you have to be a good team member. You can't be a single isolated person. Cooperation, sharing is a more important features in scientific world. As you can see here, as soon as the coronavirus outbreak happened in China, information started flowing to entire world. What is this virus? How does it enter our body? What does it do our body? How does our body react to this? Why do we get a fever? Why we get very different kinds of body ache? Why do we have to go to ventilator? Who goes to the ventilator? How to develop a vaccine? How to develop a new drug? All these things happened because everybody exchanged the information freely. Everybody collaborated. There was no one say that, oh, this is my data, I don't want to share with you, and only my country people can use it. But didn't happen, right? Today, we have vaccine for the entire world, although it takes more time to produce and distribute the vaccine. But still, we are confident that by end of 2022, the entire world will be vaccinated more than 2 times. Some countries like India, USA, and Europe, they are, maybe finish their vaccination program in the next 2 to 3 months. Other poor countries and who do not have their own facility may take more time. But still, the whole world will have access to vaccine in just about 2 years of beginning of the pandemic. All this happened because of the cooperation and teamwork. So more of this will happen in sciences. So your career is, you have to understand that you don't need to know everything, right? If you are a single person, you need to know everything about physics or everything in chemistry or biology. But in tomorrow's world, for your career, you need to know as one particular part very well so that you can become a good team member, right? So that's more important in your career. I'll skip some of these things, not so important for you. So for career perspective, you need to have more importance to data science and statistics. Particularly in biology, there is more of population biology, epidemiology, and public health. Sustainability, as you can see here, during the pandemic, some people were badly affected. Large number of people were badly affected, like our laborers, poor people, small, MSMEs, right? These are the people who were badly affected. Some people became rich, some large number of people became poor. So that's unsustainable. We need to improve that. Then there will be more emphasis on biodiversity and conservation. It's so to restore environment, reduce global warming, and also reduce incidence of pandemics. Environmental law, everybody should, some people should need to learn communication skills and so forth. And interdisciplinarity is key. So now, as I told you, you may work in a team of 100 people. What you should know is one particular module at greater depth. Let's say you are more interested in statistics or more interested in data science, more interested in physics, that too in particle physics, or in more interested in biodiversity or law. You learn that with sufficient depth, but you should also know enough about other subjects. How will you talk to the team members? For example, you want to study environmental law. First, you need to understand what is environment, what is ecology, and then see what happens if you cut a tree, and if what is the right of a village in which the tree is present, and then accordingly you learn law according to the national international guidelines. So you need to understand the science as well as law, right? You may do more science or you may do more law, but a scientist and the lawyer has to work together. Similarly, in all other fields. But something which is common across all disciplines and all career options is the data science. You should know how to use Excel, how to use MATLAB, how to do some small coding, R, for example, language. It's very important, irrespective of what you do in science. Some amount of data skills are important, digital skills. For example, if you want to build a successful career in science, I can't give you example for all fields. I'll just give you one example in modern biotechnology, because most of your college students here may be in biotechnology because of this DBT Star College scheme, or at least because I am a biologist. Now, biotechnology is what? Use engineering principles to design a product in biological system, which will be useful. It is environmental friendly. It will reduce the chemical fertilizer or something, let's say, or it gives a better medicine. It could be a vaccine, right? And it is a more sustainable solution to a problem, health problem, agriculture problem, or environmental problem. So use modern biotechnology. First thing you need to have is strong foundation in genetics, because without genetics you can't do biotechnology. Without genetics you will not know what is DNA, how it is inherited, what happens if you change the DNA sequence. In biotechnology, one of the things you do is to change the DNA sequence, first part. Then you should know evolution, because what you are introducing, let's say you are introducing BT cotton. If in a field of 1 lakh plants, 1 or 2 are non-BT cotton, what will happen to the field? what happens to the population of cotton, where small number of them are not BT cotton and large number of them are BT cotton. How do they interact with each other? How, for example, insect comes to the non-BT cotton, how it will have impact the BT cotton. All these things will be studied in the context of evolution. Bit of biochemistry, cell and molecular biology, and physiology are all important, because whatever you do in biotechnological modification, you should know that what is the impacts. It's in one biochemicals 3, because everything in the cell is a chemical reaction. We call it as biochemical reaction, and it happens inside the cell. So obviously you should know what happens to a cell. You should also know that in organisms which are multicellular, cell-cell interaction is nothing but physiology. So unless you understand the physiology, for example, I want to put a vaccine and inject into my blood, how it impacts my liver, how it impacts my heart, that you will only know when you study physiology. Computational skills, I already told you. Communication skills, you need to know how to write well, how to speak well, because you are going to work with a team. So you work on a one particular module, someone else will be other one. So you should explain what you have done, what you have understood. If other person has to use that knowledge, unless you write well, unless you speak well, how will you work as a team member? Of course, research skills and entrepreneurial skills are very important in the modern world, because everything wants to monetize it. Okay, I'll stop here. Maybe we can have some question and session. आप लोग हिंदी में पूछ सकते हैं, and I'll try and explain, answer it as much as possible. Okay, I'll stop here.
Thank you so much, sir. Your overwhelming lecture, and we came to know a lot about science, its history, and also the modern approaches, like what we have to think right now, the future of science, and how we have to inculcate within us the spirit of learning. Like, we are teachers, but still we should keep on learning new things. Otherwise, जो आज का युग है सर, उसमें इतनी ज्यादा फास्टनेस आ गई है, मोबाइल है, कंप्यूटर है, और जो मीडिया है, सोशल मीडिया है, उससे जो बच्चे जुड़े हुए हैं, वो लोग हमसे काफी कुछ, कभी कभी हमें लगता है कि हमसे बहुत कुछ ज्यादा जानते हैं, तो हम उनसे भी कभी कभी कुछ सीख सकते हैं, और हमें हमेशा अपने अंदर लर्निंग के स्पिरिट को जगाना चाहिए. क्वेश्चंस कुछ हैं सर. अजीत प्रताप सिंह फ्रॉम गवर्नमेंट अभिनव विद्यालय अराजी लाइन वाराणसी, he is lecturer in biology. So he has asked, tell about the area and scope of biophysics.
Thank you very much. पहले आपका comments के लिए आभारित हूँ. Thank you very much. So regarding this particular question, finally, when we talk about in biology, biotechnology, let's say, we want to manipulate DNA. And what happens if you manipulate DNA? You manipulate actually the protein structure and function, right? So unless a protein is changed, its structure and function, you cannot achieve anything in biology, because the proteins are the mediators of all functions. DNA is only a genetic information. You make some changes to the DNA, finally it is get translated into a protein. That protein has to do function. So unless the second part is the protein structure, protein, how it conformation and everything structure depends on what is the environment in which protein is functioning, right? It could be on the membrane, it could be outside the cell, secreted out, or it could be in the cytoplasm, or it could be in the nucleus, right? Or it could be functioning as a dimer, two proteins coming together, right? Or it has a glucose molecule bound, or it has an iron or a zinc molecule bound. So there are multiple different ways protein can function. Now, if you want to make some changes, you first should know what is the impact of this change on protein structure and function, right? Now, you can always predict based on the computational method, based on the some prediction, but that is not enough. You have to show it experimentally. So biophysics is the method to experimentally test the protein structure and function, right? So biophysics is going to be more and more important in all future of biology, because if you look at application of biology, whatever we want to change, we want to make more vitamins, or we want to decrease the carbon footprint, or we want to make some bio products like vaccine, you need to have biophysics knowledge. Of course, not everybody. If you're a team of 20 people, maybe 3 or 4 people should be biophysics people, right? So that means those who want to study or interest in biophysics, they should know very well. And there are hundreds of jobs for biophysicists. All companies, all pharma companies, vaccine companies, biotechnology companies, research institutions, they're all looking for biophysics people. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. So there are certain questions, very basic questions, since school students are also there. So they are asking like, what is the scope of astrology and astronauts in India? What is the scope of biology in India? So these are certain generalized questions. Please answer, sir.
Sure. Abhi, astrophysics and astronomy. Astrophysics scope बढ़ रहा है अभी इंडिया में, for 2 reasons. One is India is participating international बड़ा projects में participate कर रहा है, international telescope project, LIGO project, right? Radio telescope project, optical telescope project, ऐसा. So we have access to a large amount of data. So, for example, if a telescope looks at the sky for 1 week, right, it will have so much of data. You need some 2,000 people to analyze the data and try to understand what is in the sky, right? So, more and more people are required to analyze the data, because data collection has become easier, but data analysis is still very difficult. So, astrophysics and is very, very important area. Astronaut is someone mentioned. It is India is also participating in space travel. Maybe not in another 10 years, India itself will start sending people on our own rockets, but it will be smaller number. You can't expect that there will be 1 million astronauts required. There may be 1 million astrophysics people required. There may be 1 million biotechnologists required, but jobs for astronauts would be few in number. Now, in scope in biology, as you know, it's always increasing, because we are biologists. Our disease, our food, our environment, everything is dependent on biology. So biology is always going to be largest number of jobs in sciences.
One more question, very interesting question, sir. Dr. Shravan Kumar Gupta from Composite School, Dehali, Vinayak Sevapuri, Varanasi. He has asked, as a science teacher in our class, how we implement the critical thinking and experiential thinking during the lockdown period. हम लॉकडाउन पीरियड में किस तरह से क्रिटिकल थिंकिंग या एक्सपेरिमेंटल थिंकिंग वाले अप्रोच को आगे बढ़ाएं?
Now, because you cannot do hands-on experiments in the lockdown time, because everybody is at home, everybody is coming to the classes online, you can actually give online sort of exercises. You can ask them to, for example, look at, right, how the infection in that village, if the students are in a village or in a small town, is spreading, right? Just look at how many people were in January, how many in February, right? How many in 2020, how many in 21, and kind of things. How many went to hospitals, how many didn't go. They can actually analyze the data. In the process, they learn experimental techniques, which is only observations, right? And then they can learn how to analyze and critically look at it. For example, if they say now in February there are, January, let's say there are 200 people, and February there are 200 people, and March there are only one or two people. Is then they can ask the question, critical thinking starts. Is it true that the disease is completely vanished in my village, or we are not testing, or there is a new symptoms which we don't know, and like Omicron compared to Delta, that maybe they are showing more of a different type of symptoms. So these are the critical thinking they can start. I mean, just an example, there may be hundreds of such problems. It could be in air, water related, air related. It could be, any other household related. They can ask hundreds of questions. Just to ask students to, find out something, and they can refer to internet, they can refer to newspaper, they can refer to, just talk to people around to find out something, and they can develop critical thinking abilities. Okay, next question.
Hello, sir. Myself Deepak
Hello.
Vishwakarma, and my English is very poor. So, मेरा एक क्वेश्चन है. अभी हम लोग 11th 12th के स्टूडेंट के साथ अभी हम लोग सेमिनार ये कर रहे हैं. जितने भी 11th 12th के स्टूडेंट हैं वो या तो मेडिकल फील्ड में जाना चाहते हैं, डॉक्टर बनना चाहते हैं, या इंजीनियर बनना चाहते हैं. उनको हम एज ए टीचर कैसे मोल्ड कर सकते हैं कि वो साइंटिफिक टेम्परामेंट अपने अंदर लाएं, बीएससी करें, एमएससी करें, पीएचडी करें और अच्छे रिसर्च लैब्स में जाएं, उनके अंदर साइंटिफिक टेम्परामेंट आए. वो बस ये जब भी बात किया जाता है उनसे कहा जाता है कि गो फॉर रिसर्च, कहते हैं कि सर बीएससी एमएससी पीएचडी कौन करेगा, इतना लंबा टाइम कौन एक्सपेंड करेगा. सो कैसे हम उनको प्लीज.
ओके, सो वेरी सिंपल, राइट. आप सोच लीजिए, यू कैन आस्क द स्टूडेंट द क्वेश्चन, आप वो डॉक्टर बनाए, ठीक है, डॉक्टर बनाओ. नाउ आप उनको थोड़ा बताइए कि हिस्ट्री ऑफ मेडिसिन थोड़ा पढ़ाने के लिए, ठीक है. आप कैसे ट्रीट करते थे हम लोग ट्यूबरकुलोसिस, आजकल कैसे ट्रीट करते हैं, और उनको पूछ लीजिए कि आप पहले कोई फ्लू वगैरह किसी को होता तो कैसे ट्रीट करते थे. आजकल अभी सडनली हमारा पूरा अंडरस्टैंडिंग ऑफ फ्लू चेंज हो गया कोरोना वायरस के बाद, टाइम में, पैंडेमिक के टाइम में. नो वी कैन एक्चुअली, हम लोग अभी सारे डॉक्टर्स स्टार्टेड आस्किंग क्वेश्चंस, वो कैसे ट्रीट करना है. वो लोग न्यूयॉर्क में कैसे किया, पेरिस में कैसे किया, और वो पिछले साल से कैसा हो रहा था, आजकल कैसा हो रहा है. सेट, ये साइंटिफिक टेम्पर है, क्योंकि आप क्वेश्चन आपके लिए क्वेश्चन पूछ रहे हैं, कि वही साइंटिफिक टेम्पर है ना. वो दूसरे के लिए आप चैलेंज नहीं करें किसी को, हम आपके लिए पूछ रहे हैं कि ये कैसे करना है. कैसे करने के लिए हम लोग वो कोरोना वायरस का कैसे ट्रीट किया, और कोई सा मैनिफेस्ट सिम्टम कैसे है, वो इंडियंस का पूछना है, और बाहर से पूछना है. वो ऐसा क्रिटिकल क्वेश्चन पूछ रहे, तो आपका साइंटिफिक टेम्पर बड़ा हो गया. देन यू स्टार्ट रीडिंग साइंसेस. सिंपली मेडिसिन से वो नहीं हो सकता ना, आपको बायोलॉजी, माइक्रोबायोलॉजी, वायरोलॉजी, वैक्सीनोलॉजी, और फॉर एग्जांपल आजकल वो सारे कॉन्टैक्टलेस टेम्परेचर के लिए कॉन्टैक्टलेस थर्मामीटर यूज कर रहे हैं. उसका क्रेडिबिलिटी क्या है, उसको कैसे, हाउ टू बिलीव व्हाट इट सेज, कैसे उसको वैलिडेट करना है, कैलिब्रेट कैसे करना है. सो साइंटिफिक टेम्परमेंट ऑटोमेटिकली आ सकता है. सिमिलरली इंजीनियरिंग, ठीक है, आपको एक डेटा साइंस, कंप्यूटर साइंस तो अभी ठीक है, आजकल सारे लोग साइंस में चला गए. वो कुछ फिजिक्स प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व कर रहे हैं, कुछ ट्रैफिक प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व कर रहे हैं, कुछ आर्टिफिशियल एंड मशीन लर्निंग करके हेल्थ प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व कर रहे हैं. और सिविल इंजीनियरिंग देख लीजिए, वो किसने बोल रहे थे कि आपको डैम, सिर्फ वो डैम कैसे बिल्ड करना है वो नहीं है ना. सिविल इंजीनियरिंग में आपको वो भी है कि कहाँ बिल्ड करना है, उसका इकोलॉजिकल इम्पैक्ट क्या है. अभी वो 1000 एकर्स का वो रिजर्वायर हो गया, तो उससे एनवायरमेंट का डैमेज किस्सा हो सकता है, उसको मिनिमाइज कैसे करना है. हाइड्रो इलेक्ट्रिक पावर स्टेशन वो उत्तराखंड में इतने सारे अभी छोटा छोटा हो गया है. इसके ऐसे उसका एनवायरमेंटल डैमेज कम करना है। सो इंजीनियरिंग में वो भी क्वेश्चन पूछना पड़ेगा। ये सारे क्वेश्चन पूछने से साइंटिफिक टेम्परमेंट आ सकता है।
Thank you, sir. One more question. It's related to interdisciplinary science. Satya Shapat has asked, मुझे molecular biology and genetics interesting लगता है. I am very much interested in molecular biology and genetics. Is there any scope of astronomy, astrophysics to have an interdisciplinary approaches with molecular biology and genetics? Can we link astronomy, astrophysics to molecular biology and genetics?
तो थोड़ा वेरी डिफरेंट टॉपिक्स, क्योंकि एस्ट्रोनॉमी एस्ट्रोफिजिक्स हम लोग डिस्टेंट गैलेक्सी, बिग साइंटिफिक लॉज ऑफ फिजिक्स और क्वांटम फिजिक्स और थियरी ऑफ रिलेटिविटी आइंस्टाइन का हम लोग यूज करके वी आर ट्राइंग टू अंडरस्टैंड what is the structure of the galaxy and how old is our galaxy and where we are moving and what is the relationship between our galaxy and so many other galaxies. Those kind of questions. It's nothing to do with molecular biology and genetics, because the universe is 15 billion year old. Life is only 3 billion years. So whatever we are studying, which is more than 12 billion before from last 12 billion years before the life itself began. So there is no need to even connect the two. But there is a small field in which all of these are integrated. That is the understanding origin of life. Origin of life के बारे में हम लोग अभी भी बहुत कम understanding है हमारा, compared to how much we know about our own body, our own organisms, diseases. But origin of life, ये सब कहाँ कैसे हुआ, शुरू हुआ, वो एक क्वेश्चन है ना, origin of life बोलते हैं उसको. That question is now people are using a new area called astrobiology. Astrobiology में astrophysics, astronomy and biology all integrated है. Biology वो शुरू का biology है ना, origin of life में बहुत से शुरू का biology. So इसमें सिर्फ genetics and molecular biology, इसमें वो मेडिसिन का और ह्यूमन बायोलॉजी और वायरोलॉजी, माइक्रोबायोलॉजी वो सब का कोई जरूरत नहीं है. सिर्फ जेनेटिक्स, मॉलिक्यूलर बायोलॉजी एंड एस्ट्रोफिजिक्स इज व्हाट इज इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर एस्ट्रोबायोलॉजी. हेलो, कनेक्शन लॉस हो गया. हेलो, so you lost the connection, is it?
Sir, can you listen?
You lost the connection. Could you hear me what I answered to the question on astrobiology?
Yes, sir. We
Okay,
listen to you. So there are few more questions, sir.
Yeah, maybe
There are few more
maybe one or two more,
questions.
because I have to
Again
leave in
related to
5 minutes.
biophysics. It is again related to biophysics. कि क्या हम वायरस को हवा में ही मार सकते हैं? Can it be killed in the air itself?
Yeah.
This is from Anu Prajapati and Vishal Prajapati.
We are already doing it. We are already doing it. The thing is, it is not practical. For example, you can take the sanitizer, which is basically soap water. You take soap water, we are washing our hands, to kill the virus. ठीक है? So, but if it is in the air, if you spray some soap water, it will kill the virus. But there are so many other things are also in the air. We don't want to kill them. There are some good bacteria, good viruses. We don't want to kill them. So we should not use the method to use the air itself to be cleaned of these viruses. So better to use a method which is only when it comes to our body, then only it can cause a disease. If coronavirus is all there, it's okay, but it should not enter into our body. We should protect our body, either mask and hand sanitization. Otherwise, there are methods, but scientifically it is possible. It is not practically correct. You can translate. Sorry if I, पर बाद में आप उसको ट्रांसलेट करके हिंदी में बताइए. और एक लास्ट क्वेश्चन, क्योंकि मुझे जाना है, अभी लेट हो गया और दूसरा मीटिंग है मेरा.
Sir, I think the questions are also more or less over. So just give me a few minutes. Just I would like to thank you so much for this overwhelming lecture, and this is more of a kind of. The motto of this program was one day interaction. So we thought of keeping this kind of lecture, and I asked you about it, and you accepted our invitation. This was so great of you, sir, that today we are hearing you and we are with you. अगर कोरोना नहीं होता सर तो मैं आपको यहाँ बुलाती और ये ज्यादा और भी अच्छा, ज्यादा इंटरैक्टिव होता. जब हमारे लिए सिचुएशंस अच्छी होंगी, प्लीज आप जरूर हमारे कॉलेज आइए, कभी विजिट करिए. आई वुड लाइक टू वेलकम यू सर, और बहुत अच्छा लगेगा कभी आप यहाँ आके हमारे सारे स्टूडेंट्स को एनलाइटन करिए. यू आर सच अ वंडरफुल पर्सन, सच अ हम्बल पर्सन, और आपसे काफी कुछ सीखने को मिलता है. आपके लाइफ के बारे में हम लोगों ने आज जाना, उससे भी बच्चों को एक मोटिवेशन मिलेगा, वो एक पाथ फॉलो करेंगे. बिकॉज कुछ क्वेश्चंस बहुत सिंपल आ रही है सर कि मैं बहुत गरीब हूँ, क्या मैं मेडिकल कर सकता हूँ, कैसे पढ़ाई करूँ. तो इस बेल्ट में या हमारे कॉलेज में इस तरह के भी स्टूडेंट्स हैं जो स्कॉलरशिप के बेसिस पे पढ़ाई करते हैं, और हम लोग उनको काफी मोटिवेट करते हैं. एंड दे हैव मूव्ड टू सर्टेन यूनिवर्सिटीज. कुछ लोग आईसर में भी गए थे, पुणे नहीं, दूसरी आईसर्स में गए थे. और हमारे यहाँ के बच्चे बहुत अच्छे हैं सर. हम आपसे और आगे मोटिवेशन चाहेंगे कि हमारे बेल्ट से बच्चे कैसे आईसर्स में पढ़ने जाएं, उनको कैसे स्कॉलरशिप्स मिले, और फिर वहां से उनको जो एक स्कोप मिलती है आगे रिसर्च में, वो कैसे हो पाएगा. तो हम एक दिन फिर आपसे समय लेके सर हमारे कॉलेज के बच्चों को भी एक मोटिवेशनल लेक्चर दीजिए कि कैसे वो रिसर्च इंटरेस्ट डेवलप करें, और इसमें भी कितनी स्कोप्स हैं. हमारे यहाँ से भी कुछ परसेंटेज है स्टूडेंट्स का जो IIT, आईसर और फॉरेन कंट्रीज में रिसर्च करते हैं. बट अभी एक जो लेवल होना चाहिए जहाँ जिस तरह की हम लोग एजुकेशन दे रहे हैं, वो आउटपुट जो हमें चाहिए वो कहीं लैकिंग है. बच्चों के अंदर एक झिझक है, एक डर है, साइंटिफिक फील्ड में एंटर करने में एक डर है. तो उस डर को समाप्त करना हम लोगों की रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है. और मैं फिर से आपसे एक बार इसके लिए हेल्प चाहूंगी सर. आपको बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद सर. थैंक यू सो मच फॉर दिस सेशन, एंड थैंक यू सो मच फॉर स्पेयरिंग योर यूजफुल टाइम सर. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll come again into Varanasi directly. Yeah. Thank you. Bye everybody.
So, dear participants, whosoever from several places, I would like to call some of the names. बहुत अच्छा लगा आप लोगों ने इंटरैक्टिव बनाया इस सेशन को, क्वेश्चंस पूछ के. मैं जहां तक हो पाया मैंने आपके क्वेश्चंस को पुट अप किया और पटल पे लाने का प्रयास मैंने किया. तो आप लोग केवल अटेंडेंस मत लगाइए कि मैं अपना नाम लिख के, अपना कॉलेज का नाम केवल लिख के, आप उसमें कुछ इंटरैक्टिव बनाइए, क्वेश्चंस पूछिए, और ये सेशन और भी अच्छा बनेगा। अब इसके बाद हमारा कार्यक्रम आगे 1:30 बजे फिर से हम लोग स्टार्ट करेंगे। उसकी भी की अवेलेबल है हमारे जूलॉजी डिपार्टमेंट के यूट्यूब चैनल पे, जो हाइपर लिंक है उस पे वो लिंक्स अवेलेबल है। आप 1:30 पे फिर से ज्वाइन करिए उस लिंक के द्वारा, और हमारे प्राचार्य जी का लेक्चर होगा, जो आप बार बार लिख रहे हैं कि हिंदी में, ये लेक्चर पूरी तरह हिंदी में होगा, और ये कैरियर काउंसलिंग और कैरियर गाइडेंस के लिए ही होगा। आपको हर फील्ड में साइंस से रिलेटेड जो भी सवाल पूछना हो, आप प्लीज आप उस पे यूट्यूब चैट पे लिखिए, और आप अपने आसपास के लोगों को भी बताइए कि 1:30 बजे जो लेक्चर है उसमें लोग ज्वाइन करें। और इसके बाद हम लोग उस लेक्चर के बाद एक टूर कराएंगे, जिसमें लेबोरेटरीज के बारे में बताएंगे, दिखाएंगे, इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स दिखाएंगे। और फिर हमारे वैलिडेटरी सेशन में सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट जो चीज है वो है डीबीटी साइंस अड्डा क्विज। डीबीटी साइंस अड्डा क्विज में आप जरूर पार्टिसिपेट करिए, क्योंकि जितने भी लोग पार्टिसिपेट करेंगे उसमें अगर कोई फर्स्ट, सेकंड, थर्ड आएगा तो उसको हम लोग जरूर अवार्ड देंगे। और बाकी सारे बच्चों को जो पास होंगे क्विज 40% से अबव, जिनको ऑटोमेटिकली जनरेटेड ई सर्टिफिकेट मिलेगा। तो प्लीज आप लोग हमारे कार्यक्रम में इवनिंग तक जुड़े रहिए, लेकिन लिंक्स अलग अलग हैं, हमारे हाइपर लिंक से आपको लिंक्स मिल जाएंगे। थैंक यू। तो अभी हम लोग फिर से जुड़ते हैं 1:30 बजे।